My name is Deanna Mayers. I'm the Director of Curriculum for Blended Schools Network, and I have with me a colleague.
And I'm Chris Davis. I'm also from Blended Schools Network. I'm the Instructional Support Coordinator.
Chris and I have been working together to use practicing teachers to develop course content for about 7 years now. And a couple of years into the process of teaching teachers how to develop content direct into Blackboard, we discovered SoftChalk. And once we discovered SoftChalk, we're like, well, we really need engagement. So we're just going to use SoftChalk to develop those little learning activities and put them into our LMS. And that's really all we did for, what, a year or two, at least? Yep. And then kind of the cloud was born, and we exploded into creating content. Oh, wait. We didn't go right to the cloud, did we? We went to packaging lessons via SCORM.
We packaged lessons and then uploaded them into Blackboard so that they could integrate with the Grade Center. But still there was no cloud at that point. So we went from those individual objects to full lessons, and then to the cloud.
Then the cloud was born, right? And the reason we went there is what Blended Schools Network is about taking these practicing teachers who are in the classroom every day in a traditional brick and mortar scenario and teach them how to develop online content, whether they use it blended, supplemental, or completely asynchronous. And we really were married to that model. So we didn't want, we wanted a tool that let them add engagement and add additional content without, a lot of instructional and them having to learn all these different tools, right? And so that's when we went to developing the whole lesson in SoftChalk, because there was so many things that they can do easily that were research backed that they were really proud of themselves when they would design a lesson completely in SoftChalk, because they were like, wow, I did that.
Yeah, and as the first time that they sat down with it, they could create a lesson. And they would enhance that lesson over time to make it better and better, but at least in their first experience, it was a successful one.
When the cloud came about, we started sharing our template. So we would start teachers with a shared template, and because the cloud allows us to create a template that one of us own and then share it with our developer accounts, the teachers then open up that shared template and then they just start plugging in their content. So really a lot of people talk about that cognitive load for kids. When you're talking about online learning, that there's this cognitive load that we're trying to reduce it because of navigation. Well, in my world, I need to reduce the cognitive load of teachers, because they're now developers, and if I can't reduce that load of them knowing all the technology clicks and do's and don'ts, I can't get all the content that they're so good at out. Well, SoftChalk does that, because it makes it very simple for them to create an activity that's scoreable for guided practice, or to introduce with a good hook activity at the beginning of their lesson, or a formative assessment at the end of their lesson. And it just simplifies it and puts it in a world that they're used to working in.
Right. And I think the other advantage that the cloud has given us is the fact that we can use the LTI links of each lesson to integrate those lessons with the grade centers in various learning management systems. So we have our members who are using Blackboard and Canvas, but we also make our lessons available to other districts and other entities that aren't necessarily in our membership, and they may use an entirely different learning management system. So it's allowed us to share our content in a huge way with multiple systems and multiple environments. And what teachers really like about that, and administrators, is that there's a tracking piece that goes along with the SoftChalk Score Center lessons, so they can see what the student's progress is at any time, in the middle of the lesson, at the end of the lesson, after multiple attempts on a lesson, and it just really is helping add to the integrity of the lesson.
When we do the development piece, those teachers develop master content. which is then shared to thousands of users. I don't remember last count. I think it was like 70,000 users in our specific membership system. And like Chris said, we're selling that outside of our walls now. So who knows where that number will go. But in the past, when we created master content, it was, we would do the zipped package file with SoftChalk, and then then they have a copy of that one. And then there's another copy that goes out each time they copy the course. And if there's a minor tweak or fix, we like to use web links. Yeah. And if there's little things, every once in a while we have a teacher who gets an answer wrong and we need to get in and fix it. Well, we can't fix it in everybody's copies. We could just fix it in the reported copy in our master. So now the cloud has a whole different world, because now if I fix it on the cloud, that fix goes out to everybody, which is just a tremendous asset for us and for our teachers and students.
It sort of changed everything.
It was a game changer. It was absolutely a game changer. Funny story on that game changer. When that cloud opened up and LTI became available, it was the summer of, and I wish I'd had the year off the top, you probably know, but it was in late June. And we always train our developers right after school's out. We bring them in for this intensive retreat scenario. And Chris and I have planned for months how we're going to do this and what tools we're going to teach them. And we were using SoftChalk Create, but we were using the desktop model, okay? But that got released, and our proprietary cloud was open and ready to go, and Create was available to launch from the website now in the middle of our retreat.
In the middle of the session on how to create.
Yes, in the middle of the session. Chris is up talking to the teachers, and I said, Chris, we got to take a break. And in the middle of the session, we gave them a break, and we completely switched gears, showed them how to make accounts on the cloud and how to launch from Create. And that tells you how easy it was to make the change. Right. But in the middle of, now it caused some stress. But if you've ever met me, you know I'm always willing to change because it's going to, if it's better, right? But so in the middle of our retreat, that's how we launched our cloud for our developers. It was ready, so we just started using it within probably hours of it being available to us.
And it was really the best way to do it, because then, the questions they asked, it sort of flowed our learning curve too. So we learned more about how to be efficient on the cloud and how to design the lessons, set up the lessons, and organize our cloud structure based on the questions and problems the developers were running into.
You should talk about cloud structure, because I said how we rolled out the cloud. We just started making accounts and building lessons. And then we realized, oops, we shouldn't have done that.
If we had it to do all over again, we would have done A, B, C, D. No. So the other benefit to the cloud is the fact that multiple teachers can work on the same lesson at different times. So one person might start a lesson and then someone else might need to add to that lesson. Or we may have reviewers that need to review and vet the content. And so all of that can happen because it lives on the cloud and not on somebody's local machine. So what we have done on the cloud to make that process a little bit easier and more structured is we've set up accounts on the cloud that match the content. So instead of by user, it's by course. For example, there's an algebra account. There's a language arts 7 account. And so all of the content for that course is in that SoftChalk account. So then whoever needs to review that content, make changes, add to it, or edit that content can log into that account if we provide the credentials, and then they can access the content. So that was a learning curve too.
It also allows us to kind of monitor who has access, because our developers are not long-term developers. They might only, well, some of them are. Some of them stick around for a while. But they work on a project and then they go back to their classroom. So if they had a personal account, us trying to track down their personal accounts, we kind of manage those accounts a little differently than maybe some other clouds, but it works for us for master content. And then we have some people that have their individual accounts also. But it just was easier for us to kind of manage content.
Yeah, it's also easier from a troubleshooting perspective. So when there is an issue or a correction that needs to be made in a lesson, it is much easier for us to find the content because we've labeled the accounts by content name or by course name rather than by developer name. I don't have to remember who created it, I just have to know what course it's tied to find it.
The reason that we need to have that structure in the cloud is because we have an immense amount of content stored on our SoftChalk cloud. At last count, we were about at 12,000 lessons in about 193 courses. And just the lessons are just the lessons. We also have files that are we kind of separate each one of our SoftChalk files by lesson and then by a unit introduction that has our diagnostic pre-tests in it. And then we have the summative assessments as something. And then we have a problem-based learning experience that's yet another file. But we have an immense amount of content on there. So we had to come up with some way that we could really easily organize. And we use the folders to represent units of content. So we have a folder that might say Algebra 1A Unit 1, and then all those files are inside of that folder in Unit 2. And that's a lesson learned. At one point we had one folder that was Algebra 1A, right? And then all of them were in there. And we just found that the more organized we use with that folder structure, the better we are. And now we even have 2 versions of lessons. So we even have more content than that because that's active content. So we have what was our 3.0, which was our first getting started on the cloud that we were just talking about. And now we have our 3.2, which has some added activities, and they're in yet another folder. So now we're supporting multiple LTI links for different versions of courses. So we really use our cloud heavily. I don't know where we'd be without it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Geez.
yeah, definitely.
The other thing that I kind of backed you out of the student piece. So that was the cool part that was kind of the added benefit, right? Because I was focused on development. And then when we realized what Score Center was going to do, we came to SoftChalk for development because of easy use and all that. But then when we realized what Score Center on the cloud with the LTI links was going to give our students and our teachers, whoa, that almost became the most important reason to use it, whereas that's not where we started. Because the idea that a teacher can see the date and time stamp and how much time on task they had, and then a complete item analysis of each activity they did in that LTI link and how many attempts, that became like gold to our teachers.
Right.
And then we almost stumbled on that by accident. I know it was an accident for SoftChalk, but we stumbled on it.
Right. The other thing that I was going to add about the value of the cloud is that it makes course assembly much easier. Yeah. So the fact that we have all of those units and all of those lessons, and it's very modular in the cloud, it makes it very easy for the teacher to pick and choose which lessons they want to use and build their own course in the sequence that they choose. It's much easier than it was when they were trying to do that all with the LMS tools. And so, yeah, there's the value of the Score Center for the teachers, there's the value of efficiency for teachers when they try to rearrange or build or sequence their courses.
Well, and even for us, we started as a Blackboard shop. We also now have Canvas LMS within our membership. So I talked about how our membership is one thing, but we're also selling our courses outside. So when we started selling our courses outside, we opened what was called the marketplace. So any teacher can come and buy the lessons that our membership teachers have developed at a fairly small cost for their classroom use. And they get the LTI and the hyperlink. They don't get the actual raw files that way, though, so we kind of hold on to those. But when we launched the marketplace, what it did for our membership is it gave them, so they get free access to the marketplace, that they can buy anything for free. So when they get to the marketplace, they go in, order what they want, and then they just put those LTI links into whatever LMS they're using, and they have a complete customized course they put in their tools. If it's got journal prompts, they'll have to build that in the LMS. But now it became kind of offloading again that cognitive load for them to get them started in online or blended learning without them creating everything from scratch or being locked into what we would mark out as a master course. They still have our master courses they can use, but now they have a great deal of flexibility we were not able to offer before.
Yeah, they can focus their energies on really reviewing the content and deciding which pieces they wanted to use and where they want to use them.
Yeah, and it's just tremendous how many LMSs SoftChalk supports. And I don't have to worry so much about it, because if we don't know it, we'll go to SoftChalk's help and they'll figure out why it's not working or what we're doing wrong to use it in an LMS. The support is like tremendous that we get from the crew.
I would say that the support that we get from SoftChalk is unlike any other vendor or partner or organization that we work with by far. They're super responsive, and not just responding to let us know they're working on it. They respond with solutions pretty quickly. And there's often a human contact. There's often a phone call. There's often a personal response from the support team.
We went through a big change when we went to our 3.0, and that's when we really dove deep into SoftChalk, that our whole lessons were built into SoftChalk, and literally every single thing is in SoftChalk now. When those courses hit our teachers, they fell in love with them. They said the kids like them better. And there was a place in there where we didn't have all 3.0, so we were using some of the old built to the LMS standards or built in the LMS. And we did hear things like, when is this going to be like my math class? And things like that. But it's all secondhand, so we don't get it any direct. We rely heavily on Marzano's instructional strategies and part of our design process. And one of the things that he has found, he and his whole cadre came up with 11 very highly instructional strategies that truly show a significant gain in student learning. And one of them is feedback. And in the online world, feedback is important in lots of different ways, but some of the things that we can do with SoftChalk is that when students complete an activity, whether we've designed it for a guided practice activity or a formative assessment, students get immediate feedback on how well they did and maybe what they did wrong depending on our settings for it. And we choose in our guided practice, we'll use the same activities that we might use in a formative assessment, but we design them differently. So if we use a drag and drop kind of activity, we'll always enable the restart button and let them restart. And sometimes we'll even enable the idea that they can show answers. Because it's a guided practice, we want them to be able to kind of do the quote unquote homework and get that immediate feedback and then retry it as many times as they want to get the full set of points. And kids seem to be engaged with that from the feedback I've gotten from teachers. But then if we use the same type of tool, we can change the way we set it up to be a formative assessment where the students get that immediate feedback, but we won't allow them to restart or show them the answers at the formative assessment. We want them to go back and kind of review the whole lesson. So they need to launch the whole LTI again, which then tracks for the teacher a second attempt, and they can see how their scores have changed on that second attempt. Then they can finish that formative assessment again. So that would be my first cut on feedback and the need for that.
Yeah, and I think that the learner is more engaged in these lessons because they're an active participant. They're not just a viewer of content and then completing assignments based on what they viewed. They're actively participating in the hands-on activities, or the on-screen activities, I should say. And so I think that they're more engaged on each page of the lesson rather than being a viewer and a passive participant until the end.
Yeah, Chris used the analogy, she probably forgot she's used it before. is a one-way street and a two-way street. SoftChalk enables, we can just have a one-way street if we want to, so the kids just, the only thing is it's going from teacher to student where they just consume it. Now it's a two-way street most often in our lessons because they consume a little bit and then they give information back to the teacher that helps them inform instruction or design. And as they go through, they are continually giving feedback, and that I think that definitely gives some engagement to the students because they're a participant.
I would say that it has made our content easier to distribute and more versatile and more engaging. Those would be my 3 big takeaways.
Wow, that's I could talk about that for 10 minutes.
More portable?
More portable. I mean, it's changed the game. It's absolutely changed the game, and we can still stay to our mission of training classroom teachers who are in the thick of it and let them become almost a professional designer with content. It's just changed the game as to how they can get to that product and then how we can get that product out to lots of kids. So the mission is always about student learning, right? It's always about the kids or the students or the learner. And I think that what we've done is let our teachers be a significant part of it and the ease of getting it out to as many people as we can touch.